Hello, today I'm going to talk about how to properly say anything in Korean. Okay, so first of all, I always say when it comes to learning Korean, the question that you should always ask yourself is not how good am I? It's actually what type of Korean am I speaking? Why is that? Because there are in large three types of Korean, right? There is poetic Korean, there is soldier Korean, and there's real Korean. And unfortunately, 97% of people are led to learn the poetic type or soldier type of Korean. So, what happens if you learn poetic or soldier Korean? Well, if you do learn poetic or soldier Korean and you speak using poetic Korean or soldier Korean, you are not doing anything technically wrong. You're not saying anything technically wrong, but you either sound extremely intimidatingly poetic or you sound like a soldier saying sir, yes, sir all the time. So, what do I mean by poetic? Now, for example, let's say, I'm just going to casually ask someone, would you like some water? I'm just going to casually ask a friend, would you like some water? Because you look thirsty. Now, when I say, would you like some water? This time, I'm going to say exactly the same thing. I'm going to convey exactly the same message, but I'm going to take the poetic route. So if I do so, I can say the same thing by saying, do you wish for the most fluid, therefore free, intrinsic, and graceful form of Mother Nature, water, to enrich your biological existence? Now, I'm asking the same thing. I'm basically saying the same thing, conveying the same message. I'm asking, would you like some more water? But I sound extremely intimidatingly poetic. So, that's not what you want to sound like. You are learning Korean, you are getting better, but you're getting better at something that you shouldn't get better at, which is poetic Korean. Okay, so always the main focus has to be, well, to figure out whether the vocabulary you are using, the phrases that you're using, the way you form a sentence are poetic or not. So that is why you always have to avoid poetic traps, soldier traps, and that is why in Korean, almost all the words in the vocabulary have a lot of versions to them. A lot. So, likewise, anything, I would say off the top of my head, there are about 7 or 8 versions of anything. But today, of course, we are going to exclude the extremely intimidatingly poetic versions and soldier-like versions. So if we do that, the most natural, in other words, the most colloquial versions would be 아무거나 or 아무것도. 아무거나 or 아무것도. Now, the reason why there are 2 versions is because if you have a positive sentence, then you will use 아무거나. What do I mean by positive sentence? It means a sentence that does not include not. If not is nowhere to be seen in your sentence, then it means that it is a positive sentence. Now, when I say not, I am including don't or can't, for example, because don't and can't, for example, are also contractions that include not. Don't is do not, and can't is cannot. So when I say not, I am including all contractions that include not as well. So, if not is nowhere to be seen in any way, shape, or form in your sentence, well then it usually means that the sentence that you have is a positive sentence. Okay, on the other hand, if you do see not in your sentence, of course, once again, including, for example, don't and can't, well then, it usually means that you have a negative sentence. So once again, if the sentence that you have is positive, then anything will be 아무거나. If it's negative, then 아무것도. Okay, so let's take a look at an example. This is my friend. So I'm going to ask my friend, is there anything you don't eat? Is there anything you are allergic to? Is there anything that you hate? Is there any type of food that you really hate? And my friend will answer that question by saying, I eat anything well. This is how Koreans would speak. So you also have to get used to the sentiment in Korean language. This is how Koreans would speak. I eat anything well. Okay, so, well, whenever you are translating an English sentence into a Korean sentence, I always say the general theme that you have to get used to is omitting because, in other words, erasing. Because, well, what is the 3-step rule when it comes to sentence forming? It's always grasp context, omit anything that is too obvious according to the context, and then start translating with the words that you have left. Okay, so in this case, I do see a word that will not stay in the sentence because it is too obvious according to the context, which is the subject I. Because, let's think about the context. Because I asked my friend, is there anything you don't eat? So if my friend is going to answer that question, of course, my friend is going to say I as the subject. The subject I is too obvious. If I put myself in my friend's shoes, of course I'm gonna say, of course I'm talking about I. You asked me whether there is any type of food that I don't eat. So of course I'm gonna say I. So the subject will not stay. So if that's the case, we have a verb, we have an object, and we have an adverb. Okay, so according to Korean grammar, of course, object first, verb last, and an adverb can squeeze in between because an adverb is usually best when it's placed right in front of a verb or adjective. Okay, so object first, anything first, well second, adverb second, and then eat, verb last. So it's going to be anything well eat. And because in this sentence, not is nowhere to be seen, I'm going to look at it as a positive sentence. That is why I'm using the positive version of anything. 아무거나 잘 먹어요. 아무거나 잘 먹어요. 아무거나 잘 먹어요. 아무거나 잘 먹어요 would be the equivalent of my friend saying I eat anything well in English. Okay, this time, let's say my friend is sick. He does not feel well. So, whatever he eats, he feels very, very sick. He has an upset stomach. Okay, so I'm going to ask my friend, is there anything that you can eat? And my friend is going to answer this time, I can't eat anything well. So what happens if we change the sentence into I can't eat anything well? Well, let's see. Okay, let's just change the sentence into I can't eat anything. So, if that's the case, now we have a negative sentence because we have can't, and can't is a contraction that includes not because can't is cannot. A contraction of those two combined together. So we are going to look at this sentence as a negative sentence. That is why I'm going to use the negative version of anything, which is 아무것도. 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 Okay, so whenever you have not or any kind of a contraction that includes not, look at it as a part of the verb that or adjective that it is modifying. So we're going to look at can't eat as the verb and anything, the pronoun anything, as the object. The only thing that will change is that I am going to use the negative version of it. So, if that's the case, altogether, if my friend were to say I can't eat anything, this time the Korean sentence will look something like this. 아무것도 못 먹어요. 아무것도 못 먹어요. 아무것도 못 먹어요. 아무것도 못 먹어요. Thank you. Now, if you feel like you need more context, more explaining, and therefore if you feel like you need one-on-one private lessons, well, you can always inquire through the comments. Thank you.